I don't think I can beat that introduction of myself. So, yeah, as I said, my name's Sean. I currently work for the Brookman Rugby Union as an RDO in the junior rugby space. I have been doing so for the last year and a half now, actually, so I've been back a while. I am a former player and now a current C-panel referee, which hopefully gives me a little more credibility to stand up here and talk to you guys about my experiences and what I see week to week. Awesome. Cool. Basically, with my perspective, what I want to get across to you is I guess the understanding that this is only my opinion, but it's one where I think that I have a unique ability somewhat to empathise with both parties, both the officials and with the players, which I guess is reasonably unique. We are all in that unique situation where players and referees have to work together on the field, but without that total trust of one another. And this is just a reality we have to deal with. I don't think we totally buy into each other's philosophy when we go out there, but I think by getting an understanding of one another, we do start to work together a little bit better. I think we are in a good place, however, especially in the rugby world, where we don't see that line crossed where we do in other sports. If you've watched any of the NBA of late, or even with a lot of the football and stuff like that, the hounding of referees, the absolute torrent of abuse they suffer from players is just ridiculous. And so I think we maintain a pretty good level of respect. I think there's very few sports where you'll hear the official regularly addressed as sir. So I think that's a pretty good place to start. So what I want to come to, my first little, I guess, point of the night is cause and effect. So when looking for content for tonight, this is kind of the first thing that sort of popped into my mind, because I guess I didn't start to fully grasp this until I actually started refereeing on a regular basis and starting to listen to what a lot of you guys had to say about it and what pictures you see out there, which we'll come to later as well. So I guess, why does it matter? To us as officials, we don't want to have to rule on every single infringement that occurs in a game. Otherwise, we'd never have any flow to a game. So if we see a player 50 metres offside having no effect on play during the field, ideally we want to play on, because that's what we want to do. However, players don't always see this. What they see is the guy offside and automatically assume you're going to penalise him for something. Now, technically you could, by the rule of law, but I think we have to understand that for us as officials, we have to make, I guess, a tough decision and understand that it's not always going to be understood by the players out on the field, and you are going to get, I guess, a little bit of backlash from the sideline, because they can see a picture and they can see it, I guess, a causation, but there's no effect on play. So we want to keep that rolling. I guess if giving a penalty or calling a scrum is in effect designed to reset play, then we've got to understand whether or not by resetting play, giving the penalty, or more so with calling a scrum, are the team going to be in a better position than they already are? This isn't to say that, I guess, that it's only our responsibility to understand the way a player thinks. I think there needs to be a little bit of give and take in this arrangement. However, I think if we can at least start to understand how a player thinks, and this is what I'm going to try and give you tonight, then at least we're sort of halfway to that understanding. I think, and I know as a player, it was just incredibly beneficial when we had the odd referee come down to a training session, start to learn how we sort of approach things, but then also the referee starts to understand how we might see things as well. Okay, so probably my favourite referee at the moment. I mean, he's all over the news in terms of the funny things he does, Nigel Lyons. If you're unsure, if you've never seen that video before, literally calling both sides in to have a talk, let them know that he was the referee in this particular circumstance. I guess last year, when I gave this similar talk, I got to use the historic example of Wayne Barnes in 2007. Is the unfair stereotype by which we're all judged. And then I also got to use the more recent example of Craig Javert sprinting down the tunnel at the end of the quarter final in 2015. So I guess these are two really memorable instances where everyone remembers those. They don't remember all the other games that occurred in the World Cup without major incidents, but those are the two that are going to stick out, and those are the ones people are going to always draw back to. This year, fortunately, and I did have another one lined up, but this one was just too good to pass up, I have the one served up on a platter by a good friend, Matthew Rynell, from the Lions vs Crusaders game on Saturday night. Yes. It was quite an interesting one because I guess at the time, when I got to give you my perspective on it, at the time I thought that he wasn't actually that bad. I didn't find it terrible. I found, the worst thing for me personally was that I found the scrummaging decisions a little bit questionable, personally. But I didn't think overall, I didn't think he was unfairly biased towards one team or another. Could I get a show of hands firstly who saw the game at all? Who thinks he did overall a good job? And everyone else, I'm assuming, thinks he did a bad job?
Not a bad job.
Not a bad job, but subpar
an average job.
Average job.
Say he did
hands up if you thought he did a reasonable job, a good job, sort of thing. Why? Sorry.
Well,
why do you think?
It's a fairly pressured situation, obviously. Yep. So, and the other things, the language is probably one of the things that.
Language barrier.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
I mean, the French referees were named weeks ago, months ago. They were expecting the same sort of refereeing as a Super 15 rugby referee was going to do. They were clearly mistaken.
Absolutely.
I think, the French referee did quite a job.
Yeah. So, from here we've got a French referee coming in. We're used to Super Rugby as spectators, as players, and to me, that's a failure to adjust on the team's part. They know coming in you're going to get a different performance by a referee. I can go to, when I was playing, I can go to certain club games every week, see who the referee is, know it's going to be a totally different interpretation of different rules, laws and stuff like that. I don't know for the life of me why, at that sort of level, we're seeing a totally different referee come in from France, obviously refereeing a different style of rugby, and then just assuming it's all going to be the same. Okay, we all like to think that we interpret things quite similarly. We all know the laws, the rules, but our interpretation of things are always going to change. So hands up if you think he did a pretty average job, subpar. Cool. Why do you think so, Steve?
It was quite obvious in the line-outs that the ball wasn't thrown in by the Lions once, twice, and the Crusaders once, where it was definitely not straight. It was on the, and he just let the ball go. There was, I saw 3 knock-ons where he just totally ignored them. Offsides from the back lines after the players at a ruck were way ahead of the last feet, and he let them attack. That was mainly the Lions, so he wasn't holding them back to their offside lines, and that's why I think it was average.
Fair enough. Okay, that's a pretty good summary of why it might have been less than ideal. But I guess what we've got in here is we've got all people that are technically on the same page. We're all referees, we're all officials, and yet we have 2 pretty different sides of the coin. Okay? For me, my biggest gripe was with the scrums, but cool, you know what, it's your interpretation, go with however you like. Okay? And I find it always quite difficult to penalise a dominant scrum on such a regular basis, in my opinion anyway. Cool. And I guess to highlight this is, I guess, the different takes from the different hemispheres. So, the immortal Stephen Jones writing as per usual, talking about how we've got refereeing clones, Super Rugby, basically failure to adapt. And then you've got Gregor Paul, who decides to try and, you know, shift any sort of the blame. He's just saying World Rugby has a problem, the men with the whistle, but let's be honest, he's just basically saying it was from Saturday night. So with this sort of stuff, I think it's quite easier for people in the media and, you know, sideline spectators to sit in their armchair and make these calls, you know, slowing it down, you know, with the beauty of my Sky these days, which is, I guess for me is one of my eternal debates with people when they say, oh, you know, I saw him make this wrong decision. But at the end of the day, we want the game to flow, as I said before. And so even at this sort of level with the ability to use TMO, you want the game to flow. You want referees to make calls in the heat of the moment. And you're going to get them wrong. It's not always going to be a perfect situation. I think as a player, I know this is going to occur. Like, I'm pretty happy as a player, and my specialty was line out. If I'm hitting 90% of my line outs, as a referee, if my referee's hitting 90% of their calls, I'm pretty stoked, to be fair. And I think that's quite a reasonable way to approach things, if I'm honest. You know, and people talk about how when the technology is available to these sorts of guys, why aren't they stopping the play? Why aren't they making sure the calls are correct? But then it's the same people that criticise that we're going to technology all the time and then slowing down the game and not letting it flow anyway. So you're really in a lose-lose situation in this respect. Cool. Pictures. Give you a moment to have a look at that one. The longer you look at it, the more it might become difficult. Don't let you dwell on it too long. In large part, referees like to operate in pictures, or so I'm told, and it's something I'm starting to figure out more and more as I go in. Players don't. They just simply don't operate in pictures. That's not how we work. Players love to operate in absolutes. That ball's been knocked on. That guy's offside. That's a high tackle. Okay? So, an example for me of the picture versus absolute conundrum that I see a lot is you'll have an attacking side taking the ball into contact and is going forward. The ball carrier is taken to ground by an opposing player to complete the tackle. Players from both sides come over the top to form a ruck, but the attacking side is still moving forward. The ball then pops out onto the defensive side and there's been no clear knock-on from the attacking side. Now for me, and you may disagree with this, in this situation I would say that logic dictates that that ball has come out illegally. Okay? Had the attacking side going into contact, going forward, clean outs happen, we haven't seen the ball, how it's come out, the ball has suddenly popped out the other side with no clear knock-on seen. Okay? So for me, what I'm seeing is, shit, that's really unlikely that ball somehow managed to pop out at such a rate of knots from there. Bang, penalty, sorry, hands in the ruck. Hands in the ruck, okay? For me, that's a pretty good call. I'm pretty confident that I've nailed that one there, because of the picture I've seen is totally wrong. If I've got an attacking side going forward, the clean out's good, everyone's on their feet, defensive side look like they're nowhere near it, and that ball's come spurting out the other side, surely for me, that's got to be a penalty. Now, if there had been no hands in the ruck, the immortal picture you always see from everyone from the other side is, "Oh, sir!" Okay? And I guess the reason they're doing that is because they know they haven't used their hands in the ruck, okay? But you've still penalised them, okay? And dare I say it, they think you've cheated them, okay? The situation is unlikely to happen commonly, okay? It's going to happen maybe 2 or 3 times in a game max where you get that picture and you might get the call wrong and you honestly haven't seen the infringement occur, okay? But if I circle back now, just a little bit, if there has been hands in the rucks and you blow a penalty, you get a different picture. Actually, I say different, it's still going to be, "Oh, sir!" Alright, but people can hack that one because they know they've infringed, okay? So it's not such a bad thing. Any questions on pictures? Am I kind of in the ballpark around the pictures thing? We're all looking at that? Right, have we ever had that instance occur in a game where you probably haven't seen the infringement, but it's likely it's happened? A few nods. Take that. Okay. Consistency, it's a myth, okay? I think as referees we look to be consistent, but in reality, and the players will always say they ask for it, but they really don't know what they're asking for. We don't know. We ask for consistency, hoping you're going to get the call right, really. Yeah, we do hear the line, or as long as the refs are consistent in his calls, then we don't mind. If it's the same for both sides, perfect, love it. That's how we can do a game. It's an absolute load of crap, okay? When push comes to shove, crucial decision needs to be made in the 79th minute of a game, bang out in front, you get that call wrong, the previous 79 minutes doesn't mean squat, okay? So, and this is not to, I guess, make you worry about making that incorrect decision. It's just to give you, I guess, the reality of what it is. Okay, we players ask for consistency, but they're not really asking for it, and it is a little bit of a myth. They want you to be accurate at all times during a game. Okay, so the previous 79 minutes, previous games you've ever reffed against them, okay, doesn't mean anything if you get that one decision wrong. Okay, and that's just the reality of it, unfortunately. Now, for me, this is an interesting one, and we're all going to have them. Okay, and this is just a little bit of something that I like to finish off. And as players, we all have pet hates too. Okay, or what referees do and don't rule up on. Okay, for me as a referee, and I guess this does come from my playing days, and just to note, I know that Smudge's pet hate is incorrect tapping of the ball. It's an interesting one in itself. Okay, but for me, being involved, being a forward, being involved in a lot of the mauling and stuff like that, my biggest pet hate, and see it all the time, is the non-binding or the lackadaisical binding, with the shoulder unbound and guys are basically truck and trailing. In the second 15 game the other week, I penalised both sides twice in a row for not fully binding on, and they said they couldn't really understand it because they'd never actually been penalised before on it. But that's just one thing that I like. Not straight throws at lineouts. It's a big one for me. Worst thing I've ever had is not being able to steal any ball on the line out because the ball's halfway down the other guy's side. When I say that, I'm reasonably fair, I think. If it's down the inside shoulder, I'm okay. When it's so blatantly over their head, I really can't understand it personally. But I am, to be fair, a lot more relaxed on that when the other team doesn't even bother contesting. And that's just a personal way of doing it. It's not. Anyway, and then my big one in terms of foul play is grass cutting. Having 2 knee reconstructions and a resection of my meniscus in my right knee, I really don't like anything around the knees. Other guys are different with that. They might judge a player to accidentally do it, but if I see anyone diving straight at feet at knees, for me that's a pretty big one on my opinion. Does anyone have any other pet hates that they'd like to share? They think that they sort of rule up on a little bit more often than they might see other officials do?
Pet hates as a referee is players, when you penalise the team, the defending team hanging about.
Not going back?
Not going back.
Yeah.
And some of them you just can't give it through to.
Yeah. Fair enough. Anything else that sort of... Oh, is that? Yeah.
Offsides, last feet.
Offsides, last feet. Players infringing over the front, or you're swimming. Yeah, offside's an interesting one. I did have that one here as well. Offsides of kickoffs. The amount of times I see players taking 2 or 3 steps in front, and to be fair, I'd like to say I ruled it really harshly, but I kind of let it go, and that comes back to the whole, I guess, does it really have a massive impact on play? If they're 5 metres in front, then I'm likely to call it up, but for me that's a big one that I see a lot. In all honesty, guys, you haven't. I've kind of run through a lot of my content, but are there questions around anything you want from me while I'm here? Around sort of anything that you're not sure about when you're officiating, and whether or not players aren't understanding what you're saying, and for whatever reason. Any questions at all?
You talked about before when you said that about are you 90% certain that the ball shot out when you've not seen it?
Yeah.
Now, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I know when I was playing at your level, obviously, I would forgive a ref saying didn't see it more than if he constructed something I know didn't happen.
Didn't see it.
So I'd rather not penalise because I didn't see the hands in the ruck and be wrong, than penalise for hands in the ruck, even though if I didn't see it. If I just assume that must have what happened before the ball came out.
So you would not penalise?
No, if I didn't see hands in the ruck and the ball shot out, I would not penalise, and if the opposition said, oh, ref hands, I'd say, apologies, didn't see it.
Okay.
Because I'd rather be wrong and not see than guess and be wrong.
Okay. I guess...
it's easier to justify not seeing something than it is to make something up.
No, that's fair enough. I guess for me, and I do have a little bit of this, at the higher up you go, we kind of we're kind of more, how would I put it, sympathetic towards the referee in that respect. I guess if it has shot out and the referee does judge it on a picture, what I would say is that we're pretty okay with it, just because of the rules of probability and that something has occurred in that situation. Like, that's certainly a different way, and this is what I've said at the start, is that this is my own perspective on it, okay? And I can only take it from what I've done playing and officiating. It's certainly a reasonable one, and it certainly gives you that, I guess, the plausibility argument, and that you haven't seen it, it may have or probably occurred, but that's a fair enough way of doing it. But this is, I guess, this kind of draws back to the whole thing with players and referees and interpretations and stuff. You referee in that way, I referee in a different way. And for me, and feel free to have a go at me on this one, but I think that's not necessarily a bad thing in a way as well, because I don't think there's a perfect way to officiate it. But I can certainly agree with it in one respect and understand it for sure.
I think just to interject as well, it's important to know the higher you go, the cleaner pictures get. So when you get a bad picture, you sort of have a bit more reason why. So I think when you come to the lower grades, because you're dealing with messy pictures quite often, it ends up with a lot of guesswork if you do it all that way. So I think that's just an important caveat on that last point. And I think when you're dealing with messy pictures a lot more often, yes, we say it's a bad picture, but you don't want to be guessing. Unless you've got a hunch, you need to have something to go on with that bad picture.
Yeah, cool.
Often in a lot of grades, the players don't have the correct knowledge of the law or anything like that.
Yeah.
Yes. As a player,
yeah,
what's the best way that that you've come across that everyone's different that works dealt with that? So what are players wanting? Like, are they wanting you to coach them more, or because often that creates a bit of tension in the relationship, because you're all in something that is completely correct.
Yeah.
And yet the players are in the 2014 law.
No, I understand you. So I wouldn't coach them on the field as such, because you're going to overwhelm them, and they're going to feel like, because you're already the official, already the ref, they already have to call you sir, then it's just going to sound like you're quoting and dictating to them, okay? And some guys are quite reasonable, other guys will just turn you into the enemy straight away. What I would say is have a word with their coach and give us a heads up, because the best thing I ever did while I was playing is go to an associate referees course, and that's really basic, and then they get to understand it. You'd be amazed the amount of premier coaches that don't know what a tackle is, okay, or who the tackler is and who the tackle assist is, okay? So that's not a problem that's going to be fixed in 80 minutes of rugby, unfortunately. If you think it's pertinent to helping you, especially at sort of scrum time, I find, to sort of coach them up a little bit on certain things, binding and whatnot, then go for gold. But in terms of if you're going to try and give them major sage advice on ruck and tackle law during an 80 minutes a game when they can barely breathe at the stoppage of play, you're going to be pushing your luck a little bit, unfortunately. But certainly for mine, if I can advocate to any of the players and coaches, go to associate referee course and get a really good basic knowledge of it. Cool, because the amount of times people quote the DSLVs from 10 years ago is unbelievable. So, yeah.
Just a comment on the issue of consistency you were talking about before. I think we've got to be careful within ourselves to sort of make sure that we rule the same way from the first minute to the last minute of the game. And one example of that is, which I've seen, is that referees happy to let teams, say, take a quick tap from a penalty and run the ball, etc., until suddenly in the last 5 minutes of the game, and there's 3 points difference in the score, the way they rule it changes because the intensity on the referee is great.
Yeah.
And if somebody wants to take a quick tap in the red zone because they're 3 points behind, suddenly, oh no, come back, wrong mark. Yeah. We'll have it from here because the referee wants to settle it down and have everything 100% clear.
Yeah.
Whereas he hasn't ruled that way all game. So
okay. Yeah, that's a good one. I guess my consistency talk is more around the players aspect of it, and that they ask for it, but they don't necessarily know what they want. But I think for us as referees, it's important that we are still consistent, especially with stuff like that, where we've ruled something in the first 10 minutes, and then can't decide to back away from it in the last 5 minutes because shit gets tough. Okay, we have to be aware that we need to make tough decisions at tough moments in the game. And so that is a really good point around consistency. Yes?
So kind of similar to the, players not necessarily knowing law, but just in general, the biggest thing for me, and obviously this is sort of different as well because I'm a female, so I already start kind of on the back foot with a lot of guys. When you're coming to like your captain's talk as a player, like what are you looking to get out of that chat? Like obviously people have different personalities. Some people are quite chummy and chatty and other people are very serious. But like what is it that you as a player are like, oh, I feel as though we're on the same page and I can work with this person? Like, what would make you feel that way?
What would make me feel? I guess a lot of it comes down to your approach to the team talk, and then lots of guys will just want to be in and out really quickly. Other guys want to ask you questions. Okay, for me, if I can sort of give you my talk to teams is really short and sharp, because the last thing I want when I'm preparing for a game is to be in there for 15 minutes. Okay, and that's just a personal thing. But then sometimes I might have a question for you, or hey, we've seen this consistent pattern. Would you give us a heads up on how we're ruling, or something like that? I like short and sharp, personally. I think it's good, it's to the point, and it gives you that sort of mantle that you know what you're talking about. Okay, if you're you're in there going, this is how we're going to do the scrums, line out, okay, who's halfback, I know you're not going to put the ball in straight to the scrum, but at least make it credible for me, that'd be great, okay? So you call them up on their shit, because they do it all the time, and that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to try and get away with stuff, and then it's your job to tell them you can't do that, okay? So we're going to try and get away with stuff, but certainly for me with team talks, don't stray away too much from your natural personality. If you're friendly and open normally, cool. If you're a little bit more reserved, introverted, stick to that. Don't try and play to what you think people are going to like. Okay, but certainly to the point and short and sharp, I think is
Wouldn't it be fair to say that the talk to the players before the game should be generally short and sharp and to the point, because they've just had about half or three-quarters of an hour going over from the coaches, and what you're going to actually tell them is going to go in one ear and out the other.
Yeah, I mean, I always think it's quite good to try and maybe get them just as they're starting their warm-up or something like that, just a little bit before, because as you say, if you get them right at the end of their warm-up, they're a little bit blown out, or they're way too focused on the game now. So for me, it'd be try and get them at the start or during a downtime period before that. And for me, a lot of my pressure comes off once I deliver that team talk. I've set my expectations for a game. Now I can focus on myself and how I'm going to perform for the next 70 or 80 minutes. So getting that out of the way earlier, I think, is for me really beneficial. Any other questions, guys?
I think on that, just like doing the team talks, just be yourself. Like that's your first point of contact with the team and with the coaches, and I think that says a lot about what you're going to be like as a referee and as a person. So you want to be short and sharp. You want to cover what you need to, but at the end of the day, just be yourself and have your style. That's what they're going to expect. That's how they see it. You'll be consistent with your style all day long.
And you're going to start to build your own brand. People are going to come to a game and they're going to go, shit, I got Tim off. Okay, cool, can't say anything. Okay, so it's just whatever you want to do, how you want to sort of project yourself and present yourself to players, and they'll start to understand what they're going to get. And then for me, going back down and seeing guys I've played with, you have that rapport anyway with them, and you can gather that as referees when you've refereed certain teams a lot. So yeah, that's all from me.